Every month, I had to give my in-laws $2,500. One day, my mother-in-law said that the following month, she would need $1,000 more to make ends meet. I threw my silverware down and stood up. My husband slapped me twice. Do not argue. There are meals that at first glance seem abundant, but when you sit at the table, you feel a chill that freezes more than a dish served out of time. That Sunday night, my husband slapped me in front of his entire family, just because I refused to give them an extra $1,000 every month. For 5 years of marriage, I had given them $2,500 monthly, not counting prescription copays, utility bills, HOA fees, or car expenses. But the one single time I said no, they looked at me as if I were stealing their own money. My name is Cassidy Lawson. I am 35 years old and the chief financial officer for a major pharmaceutical company in Chicago. From the outside, people usually say I have a dream life, a high-paying job, a nice car, a beautiful condo in the Gold Coast, a polite husband, and an apparently decent family-in-law. But, dear listeners, a house with the lights on isn't always a warm home. There are people you can share a table with for 5 years who will never consider you family, but rather a zipper wallet. The condo I live in, I bought before getting married. It's in my name. Paid for with my savings and a mortgage. I bought almost all the furniture. The car that Garrett drives to work is also being paid off by me. I thought that if my husband presented himself well, it reflected positively on me. My husband's name is Garrett Thorne. He's 2 years older than me and a team lead at a packaging company, Apex Packaging. My mother-in-law is Brenda, 62 years old. She has a voice as sweet as syrup, but anyone who knows her well understands that syrup, when cooked too long, cloys to the point of bitterness. She used to brag to relatives, "My Cassidy is incredible. She loves her in-laws so much." But after every compliment came a request for money, sometimes for my father-in-law's out-of-pocket medical expenses, other times to fix Garrett's car, or for her other son, Derek, to invest in a business, or for Chloe, Derek's wife, to buy a dress for a wedding so she wouldn't embarrass the family. My father-in-law, Arthur, 65, suffers from chronic heart disease. He is a man of few words, chewing his food with delicate caution. My husband's brother is Derek, 30, always talking about big business ventures that are just about to take off. His wife is Chloe, 28, passionate about beauty and showing off a lifestyle of luxury on social media. Chloe calls me Cassidy, sweetie, with a sickening sweetness. But if I denied her money, her face turned sourer than expired yogurt. That Sunday night, it was freezing outside, snow lightly falling against the glass. Inside, warm light illuminated the set table. I had prepared a roast chicken with fingerling potatoes, a tossed greens, salad, and garlic butter shrimp. Despite a work week as tense as a violin string, I had made the effort to cook and gather the whole family. We were all there. Brenda sat to Arthur's right. Garrett was next to me, but his eyes were glued to his iPhone. Derek ate while scrolling the web. Chloe had just rested her freshly manicured hand burgundy acrylics on the edge of her plate, twisting it so everyone could see. Halfway through dinner, Brenda set down her silverware. The sound, though not loud, echoed in the silent room. She let out a sigh, one so long I knew something was coming. "Cassidy, honey," she said in her usual soft voice. "Lately, the cost of living has just skyrocketed. You go to Whole Foods, and for 4 basic things, you drop $100. The $2,500 you give me every month. Honestly, it's not stretching anymore." I looked up and met her eyes. "Brenda, if there's been an unexpected expense, tell me, and we can budget for it." Brenda glanced sideways at Derek, then back at me. "Starting next month, give us $1,000 more, making it $3,500 a month. There are a lot of us in the house. Your father-in-law is sick. I have to juggle everything. It's not like I'm keeping a dime for myself." My hand stopped over my plate. $2,500 a month for the expenses of a family that already owns their home outright. I paid their electric and water bills. I paid their property taxes. I covered most of Arthur's Medicare gaps. And still, it wasn't enough. Before I could answer, she continued, as if fearing I might refuse. "Besides, Derek is thinking of opening an electronics repair shop with his brother. We need to help each other out in the beginning, right? And poor Chloe. She hasn't bought a decent purse in ages. If she goes to see her family, they'll think we mistreat her in this house. And Arthur? The specialist prescribed some new meds this month that insurance won't fully cover. Hearing the mention of the purse, Chloe smiled. I didn't ask for anything, Cassidy. But a woman can't walk around looking like a disaster. People judge the in-laws. Derek put his phone down and said in a tone that pretended to be a joke, but wasn't. Cassidy, as a CFO, $3,500 must be just a couple of quick decisions for you. If we had your position, we wouldn't be counting every penny. I looked at Garrett, waiting for him to say something fair, but he kept his head down, staring at his screen, as if the conversation had nothing to do with him. I swallowed a piece of chicken, my throat feeling dry. Brenda, I said slowly, every month I give you $2,500. On top of that, I pay your utilities, Arthur's copays, Garrett's car loan, and countless other expenses for Derek and Chloe. If there is a truly necessary expense for Arthur's health, I will consider it. But raising the fixed amount to $3,500 a month, I don't agree. The atmosphere at the table shifted instantly. Brenda smacked her plate against the table. What do you mean by that? Are you rationing money for your own family? I kept my calm. It's not rationing, Brenda, but the money I earn has a limit. My job isn't going out and picking $100 bills off trees. I also have a mortgage and my own financial plans. Brenda's face darkened. And your responsibility as a daughter-in-law? Or are you hoarding the money to sneak it to your own mother? This family raised a son so you could marry him. And now, for asking for a little help, you throw it in our faces. That barb felt like a thorn lodged in my chest. My mother had never asked me for a single dollar for her expenses. Yet, simply because I refused to give them an extra $1,000, Brenda dragged my family into this to attack me. I set down my fork and knife. For the first time in 5 years, I didn't smile to diffuse the tension. Brenda, don't drag my family into this. In 5 years, I have never let this house lack food, medicine, or miss a single bill payment. I can take care of you. I can help in hard times. But I cannot feed the greed of an entire family forever. The table went dead silent. Arthur looked up, his lips moving as if he wanted to intervene. But he lowered his head again. Garrett finally looked away from his phone. His expression wasn't one of surprise, but annoyance. Brenda froze for a few seconds, her face red with rage. What did you just say? She asked. Syllable by syllable? I looked right at her. I'm saying that helping out is one thing, and being treated like an ATM is another. And starting today, I want all the finances regarding this family to be crystal clear. The room was mute, as if someone had stolen the sound. The roast chicken was still steaming, but even my saliva tasted bitter. The phrase starting today, I want all the finances to be crystal clear, had hit my mother-in-law's most sensitive nerve. For 5 years, she had only extended her hand to receive. When receiving, her words were honey. When questioned, she became the offended victim. She planted her hands on the table. Clarity? You demand clarity from your mother-in-law? I've lived 62 years to see a daughter-in-law. For tossing us some spare change, ask her mother-in-law for receipts like an IRS auditor, I replied. I'm not asking you to justify every head of lettuce or pound of beef. But $2,500 is for household expenses. If it's to open a shop for Derek, buy a designer bag for Chloe, or any other personal expense, call it by its name. You can't just lump it all into the family duty sack. Chloe let out a sarcastic giggle, her red nails tapping the rim of her wine glass. Listen to you, Cassidy. You call money for your in-laws greed. The money you give your side of the family, I assume you call filial love. I turned to her. Chloe, since dinner started, I haven't said a word to you. Don't jump in unless you want me to explain in detail every dollar I've handed you. Chloe's face hardened. Derek slammed his phone on the table. Are you calling us freeloaders, sister-in-law? I looked at Derek. A 30-year-old man, strong and healthy. Every month he had an excuse to ask for money. A broken car, a sick kid, an investment, a storefront that never actually got a sign. Take it however you want. I'm just saying accounts should be clear in a family more than anywhere else. Just because we're family doesn't mean you get to do whatever you want. Brenda slammed the table, making the water pitcher rattle. Shut your mouth! Is that how a daughter-in-law talks to her brother-in-law? You've gotten on your high horse because you make money. Sure, women make a little cash and think they're the queens of the house. Garrett pushed his chair back and stood up, his face dark. Apologize to my mother. I turned to my husband. What did you say? I said apologize to my mother. She was only talking about household bills. You're overreacting. I let out a short, bitter laugh. Not of joy, but of someone realizing they'd been waiting for backup from the wrong person. You've been listening to this from the start, and you still think I'm overreacting? Brenda immediately struck her chest, her voice trembling. You see, Garrett? You see? She's calling your mother greedy. I birthed you, raised you for decades, and now your wife insults me at my own dinner table. Arthur set down his plate and said quietly, Brenda, please, we are eating. Brenda spun on him. You shut up. She pays for your pills, so you take her side. Everyone in this house is terrified of her money. Arthur lowered his head once more and stayed quiet. Garrett stepped closer to me. You make money, I don't deny that. But that doesn't mean you get to belittle my mother. Nobody here is asking you for charity. I looked him dead in the eyes. If nobody is asking for charity, why do you let your mother keep your entire paycheck every month while you pass all the major expenses onto me? You are my husband, but you haven't voluntarily paid a single utility bill in 5 years. Garrett's face flushed red. Why are you bringing that up now? Because you said nobody asks for charity. Derek Chmedin, bro, are you gonna let her talk to you like that? A guy who lets his wife walk all over him. What kind of man is that? Brenda immediately added. You hear him, son? Are you her husband or her employee? If you don't put a stop to her today, tomorrow she'll trample the whole Thorne family. I stood up. Not out of fear, but because I knew if I stayed one more minute, this dinner would turn into a circus. I grabbed my purse from the back of the chair. With your permission, I'm leaving. When you calm down, we'll talk. Garrett quickly blocked my path. Where are you going? Out. I don't want to keep arguing. He narrowed his eyes. We tell you a few truths and you just walk out? You think this house is a hotel? You come and go as you please? I took a deep breath. This condo is in my name. I've never used that to humiliate you. Don't force me to remind you of it now. Garrett's expression twisted. Brenda shrieked. You see, she's showing her claws, throwing it in our faces that we live in her house. Garrett, are you just gonna stand there? Garrett stepped right into my personal space, pointing a finger at me. What did you just say? You dare talk back to my mother and threaten me with the house? I froze. For the first time in 5 years, Garrett was looking at me with pure contempt. Garrett, calm down. I'm not threatening anyone. Put your hand down. He raised his hand. The first slap landed squarely on my left cheek. The sharp, dry crack echoed so loudly I couldn't even believe it came from my own face. I stumbled, hitting my shoulder against the wall. Arthur jumped up, horrified. Garrett! What are you doing, son? But Brenda didn't intervene. She crossed her arms, her voice icy. Hit her so she learns. An insolent daughter-in-law. If she isn't taught early, she'll step on all of us. I leaned against the wall, trying to stay upright. You just hit me, Garrett breathed heavily. And you're still talking back? The second slap fell before I could dodge it. This time, I hit the hardwood floor. My purse spilled open. A tube of lipstick rolled all the way to Chloe's feet. I tasted the metallic tang of blood in my mouth. My right cheek burned like fire. Chloe bent down, picked up the lipstick, and placed it on the table, whispering, Come on, Cassidy. Just apologize to Brenda, and it'll be over. Us women have to know how to endure. I looked at her. Her sentence sounded ridiculously cruel. Endure so they keep hitting you. Garrett looked down at me from above. Starting next month, you'll give us $4,500. $3,500 for Mom, and $1,000 to help Derek with his shop. If not, don't expect me to respect our marriage. Sitting on the cold floor, I looked at the table. The chicken had gone cold. A thin layer of fat had congealed over the sauce. For 5 years, I thought I was building a home. Turns out, I was just pouring money into a bottomless pit, a pit of greed. The more you dig, the deeper it gets. I didn't shed a single tear. I just started to laugh. A soft laugh, but enough to paralyze everyone in the room. Brenda frowned. "What are you laughing at?" I wiped the blood from the corner of my lips and looked at them, one by one. At Garrett, whom I once called husband. At Brenda, who took my money month after month and gloated while I was beaten. At Derek and Chloe, who had just eaten the food I cooked while plotting how to extract more cash. I spoke slowly. "I'm laughing because I finally understand. In this house, I'm not the daughter-in-law. I'm a breathing ATM. And tonight, that ATM has just frozen its accounts." When I finished that sentence, a deathly silence fell over the room. Not a silence of remorse, but that of people hearing the deadbolt slide shut on a bank vault they thought would stay open forever. Garrett stood in front of me. The hand that had just struck his wife was still trembling, but his gaze had shifted from aggression to caution. Brenda was the first to react, letting out a scoff. "Frozen? Who are you threatening? You think without your money this family will starve?" I placed my hands on the floor and slowly stood up. My cheek throbbed terribly. My head was spinning, but my mind was strangely clear. There are slaps that don't knock you down, they just rip the blindfold off your eyes. I picked up my iPhone. The screen had a small crack in the corner from the fall. I unlocked it. My hand shook slightly from the pain, but my voice came out firm. "Marcus, can you hear me?" On the other end of the line, Marcus, my executive assistant, paused for a second before answering. "Yes, Cassidy, I hear you. Are you okay?" I didn't look at Garrett. I looked directly at Brenda. "I'm not okay, but I'm lucid enough to handle a few things." Garrett stepped forward. "Who are you calling?" "Stop the theater." I held up a hand to stop him. "You just hit me twice. You need to keep your distance." The way I said it made his face twitch. Brenda's eyes widened. "Are you reporting your own husband?" I spoke into the phone. "Marcus, first thing, contact the bank tonight. Freeze all the authorized user credit cards I opened for Garrett's family. The ones in my name, with the limits I set. Freeze them now. No renewals, no exceptions." Chloe's head snapped up. "Cassidy, the card I use. You're blocking that too? I have a spa appointment tomorrow." I turned to her. "My card. My money. Pay for your own spa." Chloe opened her mouth and closed it again. Her burgundy nails went perfectly still on the table. Derek slammed the table again. "Doing this is heartless. Treating us like strangers." I looked at him with a calm that surprised even me. "When strangers ask for a loan, they sign a contract. You've been taking my money for 5 years. Have you ever once asked if I was tired?" Derek was speechless. Garrett tried to grab the phone, but I took a step back. "Marcus, second thing. Tomorrow morning, send an email to the billing department at Northwestern. From now on, the family will handle all paperwork and payments for medications and services not covered by Medicare. My account will no longer cover those personal expenses. Please emphasize that the hospital must continue his scheduled treatments. We are only cutting off the financial guarantee for the extras." Arthur's head jerked up. His eyes showed panic, but his mouth formed no words. Brenda was petrified. "You dare? You dare touch your father-in-law's medicine?" I looked at her. "I'm not touching his medicine. The hospital will keep treating him. The doctors will see him, and Medicare will cover what it covers. I'm simply stopping the use of my money and contacts to give your family VIP privileges, only to be called ungrateful." Brenda pointed a finger at me. "You are evil. With all the money you have, and you count every last pill for a sick man." I let out a bitter laugh. "For 5 years I didn't count. That's why tonight, someone thought that after slapping me, he could demand $4,500. Garrett growled. "Cassidy, don't cross the line. My dad is really sick. Your dad is really sick. And your family's greed is really real." Garrett was silenced. The sentence landed on the table like a lead weight. I kept talking to Marcus. "Third thing, send an urgent email to legal, quality control, and internal audit. Pause the proposal for new contracts with Apex Packaging. I want an independent review of their entire quality history, error logs, and any potential conflict of interest. I will recuse myself entirely from the review committee to avoid rumors." Garrett looked as if someone had dumped a bucket of ice water on him. He lunged toward me, his voice devoid of threats, leaving only panic. Cassidy, are you crazy? Apex is where I work. If they freeze that contract, what do I tell my boss? I looked at the man who had just demanded cash and now feared losing a job he'd secured thanks to his wife. You'll tell him the truth. If the product has no flaws and the process is clean, what are you afraid of? Garrett pressed his lips together. It was only for a second, but it was enough to realize his fear wasn't about facing an injustice. Brenda turned to him. What contract? Why is she talking like she runs your company? Garrett didn't answer. Derek also looked at his brother uneasily. Up until now, the family only knew that Garrett went to work in an ironed shirt and bragged every month about how much his boss valued him. Nobody ever wondered why someone with mediocre skills got promoted so fast. On the other end, Marcus asked quietly, Cassidy, do you need me to call building security or the police? I looked at Garrett, then at Brenda. Not yet. I'm leaving right now. Garrett blocked the door again, but this time he didn't dare touch me. I gathered my purse, slipped my phone inside, and grabbed my car keys. The lipstick Chloe had picked up was still on the table. I walked over and took it. Chloe pulled her hand back quickly, as if afraid I would hit her. Brenda gritted her teeth. If you walk out that door, don't expect to come back. I looked around. The sofa I bought, the dining table I chose, the refrigerator I paid for, everything felt familiar. Yet tonight it felt as alien as a stranger's house. Don't worry, I said. I'll be back. But not to beg to live here. I'll be back to take what's mine. Arthur, with a trembling voice, said, Cassidy, daughter, things can be fixed. Don't blow this out of proportion. I looked at him. This man, who had seen me humiliated by his wife so many times while he lowered his head and kept eating, had done the exact same thing tonight. Arthur, get some rest. Your heart is weak. Don't force yourself to witness any more shameful scenes. Arthur lowered his head. Garrett shouted behind me as I opened the door. Cassidy, if you leave, be prepared for the consequences. I turned and looked directly at the man who had been my husband for 5 years. You just slapped me twice in front of your entire family. From that moment on, you lost the right to talk to me about consequences. In the hallway, the wind and rain blew in with a cutting chill. The condo door slammed shut behind me, silencing Brenda's screaming. I stepped into the elevator. The mirror reflected a woman with a swollen cheek and a bleeding lip, but her eyes were no longer pleading. My phone vibrated. A text from Marcus. Cards frozen. Urgent emails sent. Please get to a safe place. I read it and leaned against the elevator wall. Only then did I feel my legs turn to jelly. But I didn't cry. Out in the building lobby, the snow had turned to a freezing sleet. I walked out, leaving behind a cold dinner, the insults raining down from upstairs, and 5 people who, for the first time, realized the well they'd been drinking from had a bottom. That night I pulled out of the parking garage into the sleet. The wipers dragged across the windshield over and over, but my vision remained blurry. Not because of the rain, but because of the swollen, burning left cheek, the throbbing lip, and something inside my chest that had just snapped. I gripped the steering wheel, trying to stay in my lane. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing in my purse. Garrett was calling, Brenda was calling, Derek was calling, Chloe was sending texts. You're not answering. I knew that if I did, they would drag me right back into their vicious cycle of threats, reproaches, insults, and ultimately, demands that I just endure. I didn't go to my mother's house in the suburbs. I knew that if she saw my face in this state, she wouldn't sleep a wink. My whole life, my mom had sacrificed to raise me working tirelessly. She had advised me, when you get married, love your in-laws, but never so much that you forget the way back to your own home. I turned toward a small, high-rise apartment complex near my corporate office. I had bought a unit there after my last promotion, initially just to crash on nights when I worked late. Nobody in Garrett's family knew about it. I used to think having a separate place was selfish. Now I understood that for a woman, having an emergency exit isn't a betrayal. It's a place to breathe when the hurricane hits. The night concierge recognized me. Good evening, Miss Lawson. Late night today. I pulled my scarf up a bit and nodded slightly. Yes, just came to grab a few things. Luckily, he didn't pry. I got into the elevator and hit the button for the 12th floor. In that enclosed space, my phone vibrated again. A text from Garrett popped up on the screen. You overreacted. Come back and let's talk. Then another. Mom's blood pressure is spiking because of you. And finally, a message that made me let out a dry laugh. My hand slipped. Don't make a drama out of this. His hand slipped. 2 slaps. A demand for $4,500. A table full of witnesses. And he called it his hand slipping. I took screenshots of everything and saved it in a new folder. I titled it Boundaries. The elevator doors opened. I stepped into the small apartment. It was dark. It smelled like new hardwood and essential oils. I turned on the lights, took off my boots, and dropped my purse on the sofa. The place only had one bedroom, a small galley kitchen, and a narrow balcony overlooking the wet Chicago streets. It wasn't as luxurious as the Gold Coast condo, but it was so quiet I could hear my own breathing. I went to the bathroom. Under the harsh white vanity lights, the mirror threw back an image that paralyzed me. Left cheek bruised, right cheek swollen. A small cut on my lip. The woman in the mirror didn't look like the CFO her employees respectfully called Miss Lawson. She looked like someone who had been dragged through 5 years of submission and thrown to the floor. I leaned on the sink, a knot in my throat. I wanted to cry, but just as the tears welled up, I remembered Brenda's words. Hit her so she learns. Yes, I had learned. So much so that I no longer wanted to use tears to clean my wounds. I grabbed my phone, flipped to the front-facing camera, and photographed every angle of my face. Straight on, profile, the detail of the cut lip, the red mark on my wrist where Garrett had grabbed me when blocking the door. I also photographed the small drop of blood on the collar of my blouse. Then I opened the voice memo app and clearly recorded everything that happened during dinner. The time, the location, Garrett's 2 slaps, the demand for $4,500, the insults from each of them. When I finished, I called Mr. Sterling. Aaron Sterling was an old friend of my late father, a seasoned family and corporate lawyer. My dad passed away 10 years ago, but Aaron still checked in on my mom and me. He is a calm man who never minces words. As soon as he answered, he said, Cassidy, you calling me at this hour can't be for anything good. I stayed silent for a few seconds, then said, Mr. Sterling, my husband hit me. I want a divorce. There was a silence on the other end. Not a sigh of pity, no. Are you sure? Just his voice dropping an octave. Where are you right now? Are you safe? I'm at my private apartment downtown. His family doesn't know about this place. Is the door locked? Yes. Do you feel dizzy, nauseous? Does your head hurt badly? I touched my temple. I was dizzy at first, but I'm better now. My lip is split and my cheeks are swollen. Listen to me. Tomorrow, first thing, you go to urgent care or a hospital. Get a domestic violence evaluation and a medical report immediately. Photograph the injuries tonight. Save all texts, calls, recordings. Gather everything related to your assets. Bank statements, the condo deed, the car title, the authorized credit cards. Put it all together. You're a finance executive. You know the golden rule. Without documentation, words are just wind. My voice cracked. I already took the pictures. I recorded my account of what happened too. Good. And remember this, Cassidy. You do not fight a manipulator with tears. You fight them with evidence. That phrase burned itself into my mind. He warned me that if Garrett or Brenda showed up, I shouldn't open the door. Call security and call 911. Before hanging up, he said, divorce is not a defeat. Sometimes it's just pulling someone out of a fire they started themselves. I sat on the edge of the bed, and only then did the tears fall. Just a few hot drops that rolled over the cuts, burning my soul. I wept for the woman who, for 5 years, believed that enduring was synonymous with keeping the peace at a table she set with good intentions. The phone vibrated. A voicemail from Brenda. I put it to my ear. Cassidy, if you're so brave, leave forever. But remember that a woman who abandons her home at night is a woman with no decency. Tomorrow, when the relatives find out, don't blame me for what they say. I saved the message. Then another from Garrett. I got heated and I hit you. But you were wrong to insult my mother. Come home and we'll talk. Don't drag my company into this. I stared at that message for a long time. A conditional apology, supposedly worried about his wife, but the last sentence was still about his company. I got up and splashed cold water on my face. The water stung the cuts, but it cleared my head. I pulled out a cardboard box and gathered copies of the premarital deed for the condo, the mortgage docs, furniture receipts, the car financing agreement, and old bank statements. I piled them on the table, sorting them into stacks. Outside on the balcony, the sleet had turned to a downpour. The city lights stayed on, cars kept moving, and I, in my small 12th floor apartment, had just finished a performance that lasted 5 years. Around 2 a.m., I put the phone down and looked at the boundaries folder, now full of photos, recordings, and texts. I was no longer trembling. From that night on, I wasn't preparing to win an argument at dinner. I was preparing to surgically remove a marriage that was rotten to the core. The next morning, I woke up just past 6. I had barely slept, but my mind was remarkably sharp. My cheeks were still puffy, and my lip throbbed every time I opened my mouth. I applied an ice pack for a while, then put on a high-necked blouse. My first stop wasn't the office, but the nearest Northwestern urgent care clinic to get a medical evaluation. Sitting in the exam room, the doctor asked me what caused the injuries. I hesitated for a moment. That familiar doubt among abused women. Fear of follow-up questions. Fear of losing my dignity. Fear that the dirty laundry of my home would become office gossip. But then I remembered Brenda's look last night, a look utterly devoid of empathy. I spoke clearly. My husband slapped me twice and knocked me to the floor. I need an exam and a domestic violence injury report. The doctor asked if I had a headache, nausea, or dizziness. After examining me, he documented the contusions on my cheeks, the laceration on my lip, and the red grip marks on my wrist. I carefully filed the medical report, the billing receipt, and the photos into my evidence folder. From that moment on, the pain on my face was no longer a private marital issue. It was legal evidence. Around 9 a.m., I arrived at the office. The glass high-rise gleamed as usual. The receptionist greeted me. "Good morning, Cassidy." I nodded, trying to walk tall. Heavy concealer hid the worst of the bruising. Marcus was waiting at the door to my corner office. When he saw me, he froze. "Cassidy." I dropped my bag on the desk. "Don't ask me if I'm okay. I need the reports." Marcus was quiet for a second, then nodded. He placed a thick binder in front of me. "I've pulled everything. Your personal accounts, the authorized user cards, the recurring transfers, and all the itemized expenses you paid for Garrett's family. And this is just the preliminary draft." I opened the first page. The numbers ran down the paper, clear and cold. $2,500 transferred to Brenda every month with the punctuality of a payroll check. The condo's HOA fees, electricity, water, Arthur's out-of-pocket medical bills, the down payment and monthly notes for Garrett's car. The money Derek borrowed to fix his truck. The money he asked for to invest. Money for his son's birth, private school tuition, Christmas gifts, family celebrations. I flipped to the last page. The preliminary total was $175,000. I stared at that number for a long time. $175,000. The price of a decent starter home in the suburbs, a solid retirement fund for my mother, the nest egg for the child I once dreamed of having. And for 5 years, that money had slipped through my fingers disguised in phrases like, "We're family, we're brothers, you're a good daughter-in-law." I started to laugh, but a knot formed in my throat. "Marcus, you know what this looks like?" He stayed quiet. "It doesn't look like a bank statement. It looks like a ledger written in blood." Marcus lowered his gaze, his voice a whisper. "I'm sorry, Cassidy. I should have warned you sooner." I shook my head. No. I was the one signing the wire transfers. I was the one blindfolding myself. As I spoke, the desk phone rang. It was the front desk receptionist, her voice alarmed. "Miss Lawson, there's a man named Garrett Thorne in the lobby. He's yelling. He says he needs to see you right now." I looked at Marcus. "Do the lobby cameras record audio?" Yes. The reception area records sound. Pull that footage and save it. Call building management to send extra security down to back up the receptionist. Nobody engages with him. I am not going down there." 5 minutes later, Someone from facilities emailed me a clip. In it, Garrett was standing in the middle of the corporate lobby, shirt wrinkled, hair a mess, face red. He was pointing toward the elevator banks, screaming, "My wife is Cassidy Lawson. The CFO of this place is an ungrateful bitch. She cut off my sick dad's medicine and she's trying to get me fired. She makes money and treats her in-laws like trash." A few employees walking by stopped, some confused, others pulling out their phones to record. I gripped the edge of my desk watching the screen. Yesterday, Garrett hit me in my own home. Today, he was bringing our problems to my company's lobby to destroy my reputation. Marcus asked, "Do you want me to go down and talk to him?" "No," I replied immediately. "Don't let him turn the company into his family stage. Have security escort him out. If he keeps making a scene, call the Chicago Police Department to issue a trespass warning." Garrett kept yelling in the lobby, "Cassidy Lawson, if you're so brave, come down here and say it to everyone's face. Don't hide in your air-conditioned office while you ruin your family." I called reception. "Tell security to follow protocol. If Mr. Thorne doesn't leave the premises, call CPD to file a report. Do not argue with him." About 15 minutes later, the police arrived. As they escorted him out, Garrett turned and pointed at the elevators. "You're gonna remember this, Cassidy. You make me lose my job, I'll make you lose your reputation." I listened to that threat on the saved video. When the lobby returned to normal, executive leadership called me into a small conference room. The CEO, the general counsel, and the VP of HR were present. A CFO wrapped up in a public domestic dispute, one involving a major vendor, wasn't something they could take lightly. The CEO asked, "Cassidy, the request you made last night to audit Apex Packaging, is that directly tied to this personal conflict?" I placed my evidence binder on the table. "There is a risk it could be interpreted that way." That is exactly why I requested to recuse myself entirely from the review process. Legal, quality control, and internal audit must handle it independently. If Apex has committed no violations, the contract will proceed. If there are irregularities, follow protocol. I will not sign off on any conclusions. The general counsel nodded. And the incident in the lobby? I placed the urgent care medical report on the table, alongside a printout of the texts where Garrett apologized for slapping me. "This is a personal matter, but he came to the company to cause a disturbance. I ask that the company enforce standard building security protocols. My attorney will handle the rest." The room went silent for a moment. The CEO said, "Cassidy, the company needs transparency, but you also need protection. We will proceed by the book." I nodded. It was the first fair sentence I'd heard in 2 days. Back in my office, I looked at the $175,000 report again. My phone pinged with another text from Brenda. "You had the police take my son away. You are wicked. Karma is going to get you." I read it, saved it, and didn't reply. Yes, karma gets everyone eventually. Except this time, I wasn't the one who was going to pay. Outside the window, the sun had come out after the sleet. The city was loud and busy, completely unaware that a woman had just been beaten and defamed. I placed my hand on the binder. For 5 years, every dollar that left my account had a reason. Starting today, every piece of evidence that came back would have its reason too. My in-laws had used the word family to silence me, but even the best hidden needle eventually pricks through the cloth. That afternoon, I sat alone in my office with 2 binders in front of me. One was the ledger of the $175,000 spent on my husband's family. The other was the vendor file for Apex Packaging, where Garrett was a team lead. At first glance, they didn't seem related, but they were actually 2 ends of the same rope. One end was the money I poured into the concept of family. The other was the professional privileges Garrett enjoyed by riding his wife's coattails. Marcus knocked on the door and walked in with an iPad. "Cassidy, legal is asking if you want to dial into the Apex Packaging review meeting at 4. I shook my head. "No, tell them I am completely stepping away from the committee. All data regarding Apex is to be managed by legal, quality, and audit independently." Marcus hesitated. "But you know the history of that contract better than anyone. Exactly why I can't be in that room. Legally, I am still Garrett's wife and the person he just had a public altercation with. If I sign a single document, his family will claim I'm abusing my power for revenge." Marcus nodded. He'd worked with me for years and knew I hated ambiguity. The financial gray areas had been painful enough. The professional ones couldn't be compromised. Before leaving, he said quietly, "Don't worry. If their file is clean, nobody can touch him. If it's dirty, it'll stink on its own." I smiled bitterly. Yeah, when the barn catches fire, the rats run out in the open. At 4 p.m., the glass-walled conference room at the end of the hall lit up. I didn't go in. I stayed in my office with the door cracked. Through the frosted glass, I saw the head of legal, the VP of quality control, an internal audit rep, and procurement walk in. Without me. Without my influence to shield him. Just standard operating procedure. I made myself a ginger tea. The cut on my cheek didn't burn as much, but it ached if I moved too fast. Every throb reminded me of Garrett's hand and what he yelled in the lobby. "You make me lose my job, I'll make you lose your reputation." I opened my laptop and checked some old emails regarding Apex. My company manufactured and distributed pharmaceuticals. Packaging wasn't just decoration. A misprinted line, a wrong batch code, a blurry expiration date could disrupt the entire quality control chain. With meds, a 1 mm error doesn't just throw you off an inch, it leads to disaster. A little over an hour later, Marcus texted me. "There are problems." I stared at the screen, feeling a heavy weight in my chest. Half an hour later, the head of legal called me into the conference room, not for my opinion, but to brief me as CFO on the risk management steps. When I walked in, a spreadsheet was on the projector detailing Apex Packaging's batches over the last 18 months. The VP of Quality Control pointed to 3 rows highlighted in red. There have been at least 4 batches with prior warnings. 2 for color deviation, 1 with a registry number error, and 1 material discrepancy from the approved sample. At the time, receiving allowed them to correct it post-delivery, but the justification reports are incomplete. I sat down, keeping my voice entirely neutral. "Who signed off on compliance from Apex's end?" The VP of Quality looked at me for a second before answering. "Garrett Thorne." Nobody in the room said anything else, but the silence was deafening. It was no longer about my husband. It was the name of the commercial rep for a vendor showing signs of malpractice. The head of legal opened an email. "There is an internal email chain that an Apex employee accidentally forwarded to our procurement director. In it, Mr. Thorne, despite knowing the packaging had flags, pressured his team to ship the freight to hit quota, and he says this." The lawyer paused, as if uncomfortable reading it out loud. "Read it, please," I said. "This is business." The lawyer read slowly. "Just push it through. My wife is easy to talk to. It won't be an issue." The room fell silent again. I stared at the words on the screen. For some reason, I didn't feel the sharp sting of the slap. I just felt embarrassment. Embarrassment that for 5 years, I had used my standing to prop up a man who didn't deserve it. He hadn't just leaned on me to act like a big shot at home. He had used my name to sneak his shoddy work past the gates. The CEO looked at me. "Cassidy, do you have any input on the conflict of interest? I propose we officially document that from the moment the risk was identified, I did not participate in the evaluation, did not sign off on any conclusions, and have had no private communications with Apex." I replied. "The independent committee will make all decisions. I will hand over my entire corporate communication history to prove I haven't interfered." The head of legal nodded. "Current proposal is to suspend new purchase orders to Apex, inspect all inventory in stock, demand written justification, and simultaneously send them an official notice of potential quality violations and the leveraging of personal relationships." I just said, "Follow protocol." The meeting ended around 6:30 p.m. I had just gotten back to my office when my cell rang. It was Garrett. I let it ring once. On the second ring, I hit record and answered. His voice was hoarse and rushed. "Cassidy, what the hell are you doing? My boss just called me. He says your company suspended new POs and is auditing the batches I managed." "If Apex did everything by the book, nothing will happen," I replied. "Don't give me that corporate bullshit. You know how important this account is to me. I do. And because it's so important, it needs to be spotless." Garrett breathed heavily into the phone. "You're taking revenge for last night. I am not on the review committee. I haven't signed anything. I didn't call your boss. The things putting you in a bad spot are the emails you wrote, the reports you signed, and your quote, "My wife is easy to talk to." There was a dead silence on the line for several seconds. You read that email? The entire legal department read it. Garrett muttered a curse. Cassidy, I'm begging you. Talk to your company. Tell them to give me more time. If this blows up, I lose everything. I looked out the window. The Chicago skyline was beginning to light up, bright but cold. Garrett, yesterday you demanded $4,500 or told me to face the consequences. Today you're begging me to save your job. Don't you find that ironic? His voice softened. I was hot-headed. But marriages are supposed to support each other. What you're doing is sinking me. I spoke slowly. I am not sinking you. You built a bridge out of paper and forced everyone else to walk across it. Now that it collapsed, don't ask why your feet are wet. Garrett gritted his teeth. You've changed. No, I just stopped pretending you're a decent person. I hung up. Less than 10 minutes later, Brenda called. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail, her tone high and shrill. Cassidy, you are the bad luck of this family. Since my son married you, he hasn't caught a break. You're rich, but you're evil. You have money, but you have no heart. I saved the message. Strange. Before, those words would have hurt me. Now, I just saw them as Exhibit B. By nightfall, Marcus texted me an update. Apex Packaging had suspended Garrett without pay pending an internal investigation. Several of his direct reports had handed over emails and Slack messages proving he pressured them to ship defective lots to hit bonus targets. I read to the end and put the phone down. In a single day, Garrett had lost the two things he thought were guaranteed: his right as a husband to threaten his wife, and a job built on the prestige of her name. In life, what you borrow without taking care of, sooner or later, is repossessed. Reputation, too. Privileges, too. And a woman's silence, too. The next morning, I got news from the hospital before Brenda even had time to call and insult me. A nurse I knew, the one who usually helped me navigate Arthur's appointments, texted me. Her message was brief. Cassidy, Mr. Thorne came in for his checkup this morning. The family caused a little scene at patient registration. Just keeping you in the loop. I read the text sitting at my desk. The sun was streaming through the glass, but I felt a chill. I knew exactly what a little scene meant for hospital staff used to discretion. That was the polite way of describing it. For Brenda, not getting her usual VIP treatment was reason enough to turn a hospital waiting room into her personal stage. I replied, "Thank you for the heads up. Please follow standard protocol. If the family needs info on coverage or billing, guide them normally. I am no longer requesting any special treatment." I put the phone down. Previously, whenever Arthur had an appointment, Brenda just had to call me. I would ask our affiliated medical liaisons to set up the appointment and assign someone to walk them through the paperwork. If there were co-pays or uncovered meds, I paid the difference. Brenda had gotten so used to this that she once bragged at home. With Cassidy working in pharma, it's so convenient. I just drop her name and then they roll out the red carpet. At the time, I smiled, thinking it was a small joy for an older woman. Remembering it now, I realize there are things you give out of love, and when people receive them for too long, they start claiming them as a right. Around 10 a.m., my phone rang. It was Brenda. I ignored it. She called a second time. A third. I put the phone face down. Shortly after, Garrett called. I hit record and answered. His voice was frantic. "Cassidy, call the hospital. Mom is losing it. Dad has to wait in the general line, and we have to pay the out-of-pocket for his meds." "Why are you doing this?" "Did your father get seen by the doctor?" I asked. "Yes, but they refused to treat him like no. They just didn't treat him like VIP because I'm not covering the extras anymore. From now on, your family has to fill out the paperwork like everyone else. Is there something wrong with that?" Garrett was quiet for a second, then lowered his voice. "My dad has a heart condition. Don't use that for revenge." I looked at the faint bruise still visible on my cheek in the dark reflection of my monitor. "Garrett, I'm not taking revenge on a sick man. I just stopped paying expenses for people who hit me, insult me, and then call it my obligation." Do you have to talk like a robot? He complained. I learned it from your family. The night I fell to the floor, nobody exactly showed me any warmth. Garrett was speechless. The sentence hit like a rock. I hung up. At noon, the first video dropped. Marcus sent it to me. He didn't type anything, just a link and the phrase, "Watch this when you're ready." In the video, Brenda was sitting on the concrete steps outside the hospital entrance. Her hair was a mess, her mask pulled down to her chin, and she was clutching Arthur's discharge papers. Derek was next to her, recording, while Chloe leaned in to console her like the perfect daughter-in-law. Brenda was sobbing. "Look at this, everybody. My daughter-in-law is a big pharma executive. She's loaded, lives in a luxury condo. But her father-in-law has a heart condition, and she cut off all his help. She makes him wait in line like a dog, forces him to pay for his own pills, and she got my son fired from his job. You raise a boy, he gets married, and you end up with a woman who has money but no soul." I listened up to that point and muted the sound. Not out of fear, but because I needed to analyze their faces. Derek was recording expertly, panning to the hospital logo, to Arthur sitting dejectedly on a bench nearby, and to Brenda wiping her tears. Chloe, by her side, had red eyes like a supporting actress hitting her mark perfectly. If someone didn't know the backstory, they would absolutely feel pity. Marcus walked into my office and set a glass of lukewarm water on my desk. "Cassidy, the video is spreading fast. A couple of those local drama, Facebook groups, and TikTok accounts have already picked it up." I opened the comments, just as I expected. Daughters-in-law today are toxic. Being rich means nothing if you have no heart. Cutting off meds for a sick old man? Evil. Got her husband fired? Probably abused her power. The words washed over me like sand. People who didn't know me. Who didn't know how much money I'd given. Who hadn't seen the bruises on my face. Passing judgment with terrifying speed. It seems everyone loves to play judge and jury on the internet. I asked Marcus, "Can the hospital issue a statement?" I already contacted them. They can confirm Mr. Thorne was seen according to his appointment and that no treatment was denied. The out-of-pocket costs are standard patient responsibility. I'll get the document from them. But don't post anything yet. Marcus looked at me. "Are you going to let them keep trashing you?" I took a sip of water. The liquid stung my split lip, making me wince. If I post now, they'll say I'm doing damage control. Let them talk. The louder they get, the more evidence of defamation we gather. Marcus nodded, though he still looked worried. Shortly after, my mother called. Seeing the word "mom" on the screen made my heart soften. I answered. Her voice was shaking. "Honey, what is this stuff they're posting online? I don't believe a word of it, but I'm worried you're alone and can't handle it." I turned toward the window, swallowing a lump in my throat. "I'm fine, Mom. Garrett's dad is still getting treated. I just stopped paying for the VIP extras." My mom was quiet for a few seconds. "They hit you, didn't they? Tell me the truth." I didn't answer immediately. My mom sighed. Mothers know. There are things a daughter doesn't say, but a mother's heart hears. I won't pry. But remember, in our family, we might be humble, but we are not cowards. Don't let them walk all over you because you're scared of gossip. I closed my eyes. "I know, Mom." When I hung up, my eyes were wet, but I didn't cry. I opened the video again. Brenda was still sobbing. "I just hope my daughter-in-law comes to her senses. Don't take your anger with your husband out on your father-in-law. A sick old man is innocent." Right then, I heard Chloe's voice, low but clear on the audio. "She's a CFO. She's ice cold. Even if the family dies, she doesn't care." I saved the video, the original file, the share counts, the top comments, the accounts that posted it. Marcus helped me take screenshots with timestamps. Aaron Sterling texted me. "Do not react emotionally. First, get everything notarized electronically." "Understood?" I replied. By the afternoon, the video was circulating in several large community groups. A business partner asked if I needed PR help. An old acquaintance sent a sad emoji. Others, less close, texted half to check in, half to gossip. I didn't reply to anyone, unless it was strictly work-related. Outside, the city kept moving. At the hospital, Brenda was surely enjoying her role as the helpless victim. Garrett hiding behind his mother, Derek and Chloe thinking tears could turn black into white. But they forgot one thing. Tears can blur the audience's vision for a moment, but they cannot erase bank statements, medical reports, police logs, or hospital records. That night in my small apartment, I opened my laptop and created a new subfolder inside Boundaries. I named it Defamation. I saved every video in there. A cold dinner, a slap, an audited contract, and now my reputation up for sale on the social media market. I knew that from this moment on, the battle wasn't contained in a condo. It was in the public square. And out there, I couldn't afford to be weak. Aaron called around 9 p.m. His voice was calm as always, but I caught the gravity behind his words. Cassidy, you haven't posted a single thing, right? No, Mr. Sterling. I just saved it all. Good. First thing tomorrow is to certify the digital evidence. The original video, the accounts sharing it, the defamatory comments, everything timestamped. Anyone who steps into a mob risks getting trampled by it. I looked at the laptop screen. In the defamation folder, the video files lined up like a row of knives. Each clip was Brenda crying. Mr. Sterling, I asked, should I clarify that my father-in-law is still receiving treatment? Yes, but do it without emotion. Present the evidence as concisely as possible. The person who is right doesn't need to scream. Only the guilty raise their voices. I stayed silent. If it weren't for the 2 slaps on Sunday, maybe my heart would have softened. I would have worried about Arthur's illness, Garrett's job, the relatives' gossip, and I would have ended up wiring more money. But now, what I feared most wasn't public opinion. I feared becoming a well for others to drain dry again. The next morning, Aaron handled the digital certification. Marcus helped me print all the evidence into physical dossiers. First, the bank statements of the $175,000 spent over 5 years. Second, the urgent care report and the photos of my bruises. Third, the police incident report from Garrett's outburst at the office. Fourth, the hospital's statement confirming Arthur was treated according to protocol. Fifth, my company's notice regarding the Apex packaging audit being a corporate compliance issue, not a personal vendetta. Marcus looked at the 5 dossiers on the desk and sighed. Cassidy, if you drop this, they won't have a leg to stand on. I shook my head. Don't be so sure. People who want to believe you're guilty will look at a blank piece of paper and call it fake. But I don't need to convince everyone. I just need the truth to be on the record. Around noon, my company issued an internal memo and sent a brief note to key partners. It was highly sterile. The audit of Apex packaging is a standard quality control procedure triggered by identified risks. CFO Cassidy Lawson has recused herself from the evaluation committee to avoid conflicts of interest. All conclusions will be based solely on technical reports. No mention of Garrett being my husband. No personal details. The cleaner it is, the less oxygen the fire gets. Early that afternoon, Aaron sent a cease and desist via certified mail to Brenda, Derek, and Chloe, demanding they take down the fabricated video, stop defamatory behavior, and issue a public apology, or face a lawsuit. At 3 p.m., I made my first post on my personal social media accounts. Just a few lines. I have not suspended anyone's medical treatment. Northwestern confirms that Mr. Arthur Thorne continues to receive care according to standard protocol. I have merely stopped funding personal, out-of-pocket VIP privileges after surviving domestic violence at the hands of my husband. Relevant evidence is in the hands of my legal counsel. I attached the hospital statement, the CPD incident report, the medical evaluation, with sensitive info redacted, and a summary page of the bank statements clearly showing the $2,500 monthly transfers over 5 years. I hit publish without my hand shaking. For the first 10 minutes, the comments were divided. Some called me calculated. Others asked how a daughter-in-law could let her sick father-in-law pay for his own pills. But then, people with common sense started chiming in. She gives them $2,500 a month, and they call her ungrateful? The husband beats her, and she's supposed to fund the whole family? Make it make sense. The hospital says he's getting treated. That crying video is pure manipulation. This is the peak of financial abuse. They drain her for 5 years and bite her when she turns the tap off. I read that far and turned off the screen. I didn't want to get drunk on the support or sink under the insults. Both were just waves, and I needed to stay firmly on the shore. In a person's life, trust is like a glass of water filled to the brim. It only takes one greedy hand to tilt it and spill all the affection. Would Brenda stop now that her first mask had slipped? The answer arrived sooner than expected. Around 5 p.m., Garrett called. I hit record and answered. "Cassidy, take that post down," he demanded, his voice rough. "Why? Because you uploaded the medical report? Now everyone knows I hit you. I only told the truth. But how am I supposed to show my face at work? My friends are asking me. My old boss knows." I let out a bitter laugh. "When you came screaming into my corporate lobby, did you think about how I was supposed to show my face?" Garrett went quiet, then lowered his tone. "My mom is older. She got heated and uploaded the video. You're the daughter-in-law. Can't you just take the high road?" "Garrett, you're asking me to take the high road while your mother publicly defames me?" "I'm not saying it like that, but airing dirty laundry hurts us both." I looked at the mark on my wrist, which had faded to a pale purple. It doesn't hurt the person who hits, and the person who defames. Providing evidence to defend myself isn't wrong. "You've changed to the point that it's scary," he yelled. "You're wrong," I replied. "I've just stopped being an easy target." I hung up. Less than half an hour later, Brenda's crying video started getting flooded with backlash comments. Many people shared my post. Some of the drama pages that hosted the original video quietly deleted it. One sent me a DM apologizing for not verifying the story. Marcus sent me a screenshot of a private group where someone asked, if she gave them $175,000 and they still hit her, what exactly did that family want? I stared at that question. They wanted me to hand over money without asking questions. They wanted to hit me without me complaining. They wanted me to lose my dignity but keep my head bowed. They wanted a woman who was simultaneously a cash cow, a beast of burden, and a human shield for their entire family. That night, I got a text from an unknown number. It was Chloe. "Cassidy, Brenda is furious. Derek is freaking out that his creditors are going to see all this online. Be careful." I read it, saved it, and didn't reply. Across the city, Brenda was probably slamming tables. Garrett pulling his hair out. Derek cursing the volatility of the internet. And Chloe, for the first time, feeling real fear. The block that had sat at the table demanding an extra $1,000 was beginning to crack from the inside. I shut my laptop, got up, and made a hot tea. I didn't feel total relief. A stained reputation isn't bleached clean in an afternoon. But at least the truth had found its first voice. And this time, that voice didn't shake. Brenda didn't leave me alone for a single day. Tuesday morning, right as I finished a budget meeting, the building receptionist called. The girl's voice was hushed. "Mrs. Lawson, there's an older woman in the lobby claiming to be your mother-in-law. She's sitting in the middle of the walkway, crying hysterically. And she brought other people." I put my pen down. I didn't need to ask to know it was Brenda. "Is security there?" "Yes, but she refuses to go to the visitor room. She says if you don't come down, she'll sit there until tonight." I looked at Aaron Sterling, who had just arrived to review the dossiers. Hearing this, he nodded slightly. "Go down. But don't go alone. I asked building management to pull the lobby feeds. Then I asked Marcus to record the interaction on his phone." Carrying my evidence binder, I rode the elevator down with Aaron. The moment the doors opened, the wailing hit my ears. Brenda was sitting on the marble floor, hair disheveled, slapping her thighs. Next to her were two relatives from her hometown, a distant aunt and a cousin. I'd only met twice at family functions. They weren't crying, just looking around. Seeing me, Brenda screamed, "There she is! Look at her, everyone! My daughter-in-law is rich. She's an executive, and she hired a fancy lawyer to ruin her in-laws. She abandoned her sick father-in-law, got her husband fired, and won't even look her own mother-in-law in the eye." Tenant stopped. Someone pulled out a phone to record. I stopped a few feet from her. "Mrs. Thorne, this is the lobby of a private residence. If you have business to discuss, go up to the visitor suite and speak with my attorney." Hearing me call her Mrs. Thorne, her face contorted. "What do you mean, Mrs.? I am your mother-in-law." I looked right at her. "Since Sunday night, when you watched your son hit me and said, "Hit her so she learns." I lost enough respect for you to call you Brenda. A murmur rippled through the onlookers. Garrett's cousin frowned. Cassidy, regardless, she's an older woman. You can't talk to her like that. Aaron stepped forward. Sir, we are dealing with a case of disturbing the peace, defamation, and domestic violence. I highly advise you to tell Mrs. Thorne to calm down. If you participate in spreading false information, you will also be held legally liable. The cousin shut his mouth immediately. Brenda pointed at me. She's lying. She gave herself that bruise. A simple couple's argument, and she turns it into attempted murder. She wants to leave my son and keep everything, so she makes this up. I opened my binder and pulled out a copy of the CPD report and the medical evaluation. Aaron handed a copy to the building manager and spoke loudly. We possess a medical forensic report, text messages where Mr. Thorne admits to striking his wife, security footage of his erratic behavior at her workplace, and hospital confirmation that Mr. Arthur Thorne's treatment has never ceased. We ask building management to document that Mrs. Brenda Thorne has come here to cause a disturbance and defame my client. A security guard called for backup. A tenant recording on her phone suddenly lowered it. Brenda, seeing the tide turn against her, leaped up and lunged at me. What papers are you waving to threaten me? I birthed your husband. You owe me respect. Security intercepted her. Her hands clawed the air, her nails inches from my neck. I stepped back half a pace. My heart was pounding, but I didn't hide behind anyone. I spoke slowly. You do not have the right to educate me with violence, and you certainly don't have the right to defame me to extort money. I never extorted you, Brenda shrieked. I just want justice for my son. Justice doesn't come in $4,500 monthly installments, I replied. That line sparked more murmurs among the crowd. Garrett's aunt grabbed Brenda's arm. Let's go, Brenda. There are too many cameras here. Brenda shook her off. So what if there are cameras? I'm not afraid. I'm telling the truth. Aaron looked at the manager. Please call the Chicago police. We will press charges right here. About 10 minutes later, CPD arrived. The manager handed over the security tapes. Aaron gave a concise statement. I only said what was strictly necessary. I had learned that when you're being defamed, the more you talk, the easier it is for them to drag you into the mud. Brenda was still yelling. I come to see my daughter-in-law and they call the cops on me. What terrible luck my son had marrying this woman. An officer told her to calm down. Ma'am, if you have a family dispute, take it to civil court. You cannot sit in a residential lobby disturbing the peace and screaming insults. Brenda was speechless for a second, then turned to me, lowering her voice but her eyes full of venom. You think because you have a lawyer you're gonna win? Life is very long, Cassidy. I looked at her. She was terrifying in her boundless greed, and pathetic because she still thought she could force the world to listen by crying. I don't need to win in a lobby, I said. I just need you to stop before things get worse. Are you threatening me? She let out a scoff. I'm warning you. The police filed the report. They escorted Brenda to the precinct. The two relatives, who initially tried to defend her, quietly backed away when they heard about the medical reports and notarized evidence. Blood is thick, but when people see they might get splashed, they prefer to keep their distance. Before leaving, Brenda turned and looked at me. It wasn't a tearful look anymore. It was cold, dark, and full of hate. Garrett didn't show up, but minutes later he texted me, "You crossed the line. My mom is older. How could you call the cops on her?" I screenshotted it and replied with a single sentence. You should advise your mother to stop defaming me, instead of advising me to endure it. He didn't reply again. I returned to my apartment at dusk. In the elevator, the mirror reflected my face. The bruising was fading, but my expression was entirely different. Before, all Brenda had to do was cry, and my heart would soften. A relative just had to say, "After all, she's your mother-in-law," and I felt guilty. But after that morning in the lobby, I realized one thing. Evil people aren't afraid of you being good. They're afraid of you having boundaries. That night, I opened the boundaries folder and made a new subfolder. Disturbing the peace. Residents. I saved the camera footage, the police report, and Garrett's text. I didn't know what else Brenda would do, but I was sure of one thing. From now on, every time she crossed my lines, there would be evidence waiting for her on the other side. A week after Brenda's lobby spectacle, I thought things would cool down. But greedy people, when one door closes, usually look for a window. That morning I was in a budget meeting when the receptionist called. Cassidy, 3 men are here looking for you. They say it's about a debt owed by a Derek Thorne. They have papers and demand to see you right now. I put down my pen. Are they causing trouble? Not yet, but they said if you don't come down, they'll wait. I looked at Marcus. Take them to the visitor suite on the ground floor. Make sure the camera is on. Alert security to stand by outside, under no circumstances in the main lobby. I knew my in-laws' playbook too well. The moment they had an audience, they turned it into a circus. And in a circus, the loudest one doesn't always have the truth. 5 minutes later, I walked into the room. 3 men were waiting. One in his 40s with a thick gold chain around his neck, holding a stack of papers. The other 2 were younger with aggressive postures. The guy with the chain looked me up and down. You, Cassidy Lawson? I sat across the table. Marcus sat next to me. I am. How can I help you? The man slapped the papers on the table. Your brother-in-law, Derek Thorne, owes us $80,000. Money we loaned him to open an electronics shop. On the contract, you are listed as the guarantor. Now he's not answering his phone and has vanished. We came to sort this out with you. I looked at the document. There was my name, my social security number, partially redacted, the address of my old Gold Coast condo, and a signature that looked chillingly like mine. But it only looked like it. Whoever forged it tried to copy the final flourish, but the pen pressure was wrong. I've been in finance for over a decade. I know how my own signature breathes. I looked up. This signature is forged. The man smiled mockingly. You say it's fake, and that's that? We have a copy of your ID attached, and a copy of a utility bill. Your family gave it to us. That's why we trusted him. Marcus looked at me. I remembered that a year ago, Brenda had asked for my driver's license. She said it was to finalize some insurance paperwork for Arthur, and to save me the hassle of constantly bringing it up, she wanted to make a photocopy. I was busy, and thinking it was a family matter, I handed it over. They say fish die by the mouth. I almost died by the word family. I spoke slowly. I have never seen you before. I have never co-signed a loan for Derek Thorne. If you trust this document, I suggest we go to the police precinct together. I will request a handwriting analysis. One of the younger guys slammed the table. Don't hit us with legal threats. The money was lent out. Who's paying it back? I looked right at him. The person who asked for the loan was Derek Thorne, and whoever forged my signature if proven will face criminal charges. I am not paying a cent of a debt based on a fraudulent document. The guy with the chain narrowed his eyes. You're a CFO. $80,000 isn't much for you. Pay it and save yourself the headache. If we have to keep hunting down your family, you're gonna look real bad. I smiled very faintly. In the last few days, I've been dragged through the mud online, had a scene caused in my lobby, and had my husband scream at me in my corporate office. Do you really think I'm still afraid of looking bad? The room went quiet for a few seconds. I turned to Marcus. Call Aaron Sterling. Tell him some individuals came to the office with a loan contract featuring a forged signature. Ask security for a copy of this room's footage. The younger guy jumped up. You're really calling the cops? You came to demand a debt using a paper with my signature, I replied. I am the victim of identity theft. It is my right to call the police. The guy with the chain stared at me for a moment, then motioned for his buddy to sit down. All right, if you want to do it the hard way, do it. But remember, Derek is your brother-in-law. I looked at the papers. Then you should ask him why a brother-in-law forges his sister-in-law's signature. About 20 minutes later, Aaron arrived, examined the contract, requested a copy, and formally documented the interaction. He told the creditors point blank, "My client does not recognize this signature. We will be filing a police report for identity theft and forgery. If you are a legitimate lending entity, you should cooperate by providing evidence instead of harassing her at her workplace." Hearing the word legitimate, the expression of the guy with the chain shifted subtly. They left shortly after. That afternoon, Marcus brought me security footage from my old condo's interior cameras. One afternoon, 6 months ago, Derek carefully opened the door to my home office. A few minutes later, he walked out with a blue folder. I watched the video 3 times. Every time, I felt colder. Is there anything else? I asked. Marcus put his phone down. I recovered some old texts from a backup you did. There's an exchange between Brenda and Derek. Brenda says, "The sample signature is in the insurance docs. Make it exact. Cassidy cares a lot about appearances. If there are problems, she'll pay to make it go away." I closed my eyes. In my mind, I heard Brenda crying at the hospital. I just hope my daughter-in-law comes to her senses. Turns out, those weren't the tears of a victim. They were the tears of someone whose scam had just been exposed. I sent everything to Aaron. By nightfall, CPD requested Derek for questioning. But he wasn't home. Brenda called me. This time she wasn't crying. Her voice was a low growl. "Cassidy, do you want to put your brother-in-law in jail?" I hit record. "I want whoever forged my signature to take responsibility. For a lousy 80 grand? If you just pay it, nobody gets hurt? You make a drama out of everything, and my grandson will have to carry the shame of having a father in prison. Will that make you happy?" When Derek forged my signature, I asked, "Did you think about the shame you were bringing on me?" She went quiet, then hissed, "You are a heartless bitch." I hung up. Less than an hour later, I got a text from an unknown number. It was Chloe. "Cassidy. Brenda is forcing me to sign an acknowledgement of debt instead of Derek. If I don't," she says, "I'm a bad wife abandoning my husband. The debt collectors went to my son's school today. I'm so scared." I read the message. Chloe, the one who had sided with Brenda to call me cold, was now feeling very real fear. I replied, "If you have proof of the forgery, save it. If you want to protect your son, tell the truth. Do not sign any more papers." Close to midnight, Chloe responded, "Understood." I put the phone away. Outside, the city slept. But at my in-laws' house, the lights were surely still on. Not for a family gathering, but because debt and paranoia had taken a seat at their table. The same table where they once demanded an extra $1,000. Now, they were being served a new dish. A dish called consequences. I didn't fall asleep right after Chloe's last text. Understood. Those 2 words weren't an apology or a promise. They were the whisper of someone looking over the edge of a cliff. Around 1 a.m., my phone buzzed. Chloe had sent an audio file followed by 3 photos. I sat up, turned on the lamp, and put my earbuds in. Before opening anything, I messaged Aaron so he could secure the original unedited files. I took a deep breath and hit play. First, I heard a child's soft cough, Derek and Chloe's son. Then Brenda's voice, lower than usual but just as sharp. "Sign it. If your husband took out the loan, the wife has to answer for it. The family is in a mess. If you don't sign, do you want them to throw Derek in jail?" Chloe's voice was trembling. "Brenda, I didn't know anything about this money. I don't even know when he took it out. Why do I have to acknowledge the debt now?" Derek cut in harshly. "Talk less. Husband and wife are one. If I did business, it was for all of us." Brenda added, "A smart woman knows how to protect her husband. Don't be like Cassidy. She has money, but she's so evil she'd ruin her own husband." Hearing my name, I smiled bitterly. Chloe stammered, "But the collectors went to the school." I'm terrified. If that paper has Cassidy's fake signature, we should just tell the truth. A fist slammed on a table. "Tell the truth?" Brenda hissed. "Let Cassidy pay. She's an executive. She's too proud. She won't dare let her name get dragged through the mud for a debt. When she gave me her papers, she should have secured them. We're family. What does it matter if we use them a little?" Derek whispered. But Cassidy took it seriously. "She brought the cops in, for real. They're just threats," Brenda retorted. "Women like her, the higher they climb, the more terrified they are of a scandal. You just stay quiet if you have to. Say she signed it when she agreed to loan the money. And now she's backing out. Nobody defends a daughter-in-law who abandons her husband." The recording ended there. I took off the earbuds and sat in silence for a long time. I opened the 3 photos Chloe sent. The first was a scan of my driver's license. The second was the forged loan contract, and next to it, a scrap of paper with several attempts at copying my signature. The third was a photo of Brenda sitting at my old dining room table, holding the same blue folder the security camera caught Derek taking from my office. I saved everything into the forged signature folder. Then I texted Chloe one sentence. Keep the originals. Don't sign anything. Talk to Mr. Sterling tomorrow morning if you want to protect your son. Chloe replied minutes later. It's not that I care about you. I just don't want my son growing up with thugs chasing him. I read her reply and felt lighter. At least she wasn't pretending to be a saint. A selfish person telling the truth is more reliable than someone preaching morality while hiding a knife behind their back. The next morning, Chloe went to Aaron Sterling's law office. I was there, sitting a bit further back. Chloe wore an old coat and had dark bags under her eyes. As soon as she sat down, she lowered her head. Cassidy, I know I sided with Brenda before. I said things. I'm not asking you to forgive me. Just don't drag my kid into this. Your son isn't at fault, I replied. But if you want to protect him, you have to tell the truth, without adding, deleting, or inventing. Chloe nodded. She recounted how Brenda had kept my documents from the insurance file, how Derek took out loans from sketchy lenders, using some of the money to pay off old debts, some on cheap inventory he couldn't sell, and the rest just vanished. When the creditors squeezed him, Brenda said I had money and they should go after me. Aaron asked, Did you directly see Derek practicing Cassidy's signature? Chloe swallowed hard. Once, at the dining room table. He opened a photo of Cassidy's signature on his phone and copied it. My mother-in-law was next to him, telling him the final loop didn't look right. Hearing that, my fingers went ice cold. At that very table, some days I served them roast chicken. Other days, they sat there practicing how to forge my identity. I was raising vultures. Only these vultures ate in my house and then picked at my heart. Aaron took notes and asked Chloe to sign a sworn affidavit. She read it carefully and signed. Her hand shook, but the signature was clear. By noon, the police received the new evidence. Derek was brought in for questioning again. This time, he couldn't hide. Marcus texted me an update. Derek is at the precinct. He's contradicting himself. Says his mom kept the papers and he just did what she told him. I wasn't surprised. When it came to splitting cash, they were all family. When it came to splitting the blame, everyone looked the other way. That afternoon, Brenda called me from an unknown number. I hit record. You're unbelievable, Cassidy. You managed to get Chloe to betray her own family. Chloe is saving her son, I replied. I didn't convince anyone. Don't think a couple of recordings will take me down. This family is broken because of you. I looked at the dossiers on my desk. Your family isn't broken because of me. It's broken because everyone got used to stealing what wasn't theirs and calling it family affection. Brenda breathed heavily. You will regret this. I stayed silent for a second. That threat didn't scare me nearly as much as Arthur's unusual silence over the last few days. A man with a heart condition living next to Brenda. What did he know about what happened with my pregnancy? The thought sent a chill down my spine. Just as I was about to call Arthur, my phone rang. It was his number. I answered immediately. Arthur, can you hear me? On the other end, there was only ragged breathing. Then his voice, so weak it sounded like he was drowning. Cassidy. Daughter. You have to be careful with Brenda. I jumped up. Where are you? Speak clearly. He coughed violently. There was a thud, like something hitting the floor. Then he gasped out. What happened years ago with your pregnancy? It wasn't. An authoritative shout echoed through the phone, and the call was cut off. I stared at the black screen, completely frozen. All the noise around me vanished. Only Arthur's unfinished words remained. What happened with your pregnancy? It wasn't. Wasn't what? Wasn't an accident? Wasn't my carelessness? Wasn't fate? I dug my nails into the edge of the desk, my fingertips freezing. For 2 years, I had tried to lock that memory away like a burned-out room. I thought if I didn't open the door, the smoke would never get out. But with one call from Arthur, the door was blown wide open, and all the pain rushed back, thick and dark. 2 years ago, I was 4 months pregnant. It was my first child with Garrett. When the test came back positive, I cried with joy in the bathroom. I remember putting a hand on my belly and whispering foolishly, "Hi, it's Mommy. Are you in there?" Back then, I still believed my marriage could be saved. I thought a child would make Garrett mature, that Brenda, out of love for her grandchild, would stop criticizing me, that Arthur would find a new joy to improve his health, that the whole family would stop seeing me as an outsider. I was wrong. When Brenda found out about the pregnancy, she smiled to my face. But behind my back, the complaining started. She said being pregnant was no big deal, that women back in the day worked the fields until they went into labor. She said that for a CFO, I was as fragile as a leaf. Once, when I suggested cutting back on the financial help to Derek to save for the baby, she laughed bitterly. "The kid is the size of a bean and you're already hoarding money for it. There are still a lot of needs in this house." Her words hurt, but I chose to stay quiet. I comforted myself by thinking, older people just talk like that. The afternoon it happened, it was raining. A gray, heavy downpour, identical to the one last Sunday night. I came home from work earlier than usual because I felt tired and my stomach was cramping slightly. Garrett was still at the office. Derek and Chloe weren't there. Arthur had gone to a checkup. Only Brenda was in the condo. I remember opening the door, taking off my shoes, and calling out, "I'm home, Brenda." She was sitting on the sofa looking at her phone. She just muttered an, "Uh-huh." I asked if she had eaten, but she didn't answer. Feeling exhausted, I told her, "I'm going to lie down in the bedroom for a bit. I'll come down later to make dinner." The stairs in our duplex weren't long, barely a dozen steps with a wooden handrail on the right. I walked up slowly. When I was just a few steps from the landing, I heard the soft shuffle of slippers behind me. I thought it was Brenda, coming up to get something. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. A force shoved me square in the back. I lost my balance. I tried to grab the handrail, but my hand slipped. My entire body pitched forward. The sound of my knees hitting the hardwood edges, a sharp pain in my abdomen, it all blurred into one. When I regained consciousness, I was lying at the bottom of the stairs. My maternity dress was stained with blood. I always thought I had tripped. The doctor said I suffered abdominal trauma from the fall, and the pregnancy wasn't viable. I heard that sentence in a sterile, white hospital room and felt as if every bone in my body had been ripped out. Garrett was by my side, eyes red. Brenda, at the foot of the bed, murmured, "What terrible luck. I guess it just wasn't meant to be in this family." The pain was so intense I couldn't even reply. After that, I blamed myself for 2 years. I blamed myself for working too much, for being careless, for failing to protect my child. I never dared to think someone had pushed me. That night, after calming down, I called Aaron Sterling. Listening to me, he was silent for a long time. "Cassidy, remember this. A suspicion is just a suspicion, not a fact. It's been 2 years. Getting evidence is incredibly hard. We cannot draw conclusions based on grief." "I understand. But I have to know, Aaron. If I lost my child in an accident, I will live with the pain. But if someone hurt them," I couldn't finish. Aaron took a deep breath. "Let's start with the paperwork. Medical records, ultrasounds, texts from that time, who was in the house, building cameras if they still exist, the concierge on duty, the housekeeper. We will go piece by piece without assuming anything." I opened the filing cabinet in my apartment. There was a drawer I hadn't touched since the day I lost the baby. Inside was the cream-colored maternity dress my mom bought me, the pregnancy journal, a few black and white ultrasounds. I picked them up. My heart ached as if someone was crushing it. In the ultrasound, my child was just a tiny silhouette, but to me, they had been an entire spring. I sat on the floor and reviewed the medical report. Date of admission. Time. Diagnosis. Trauma from fall on stairs. Non-viable 1-6-week pregnancy. I read that line over and over until the letters danced. The next day, Marcus brought me an old external hard drive. "Cassidy, a long time ago you backed up your phone to your work computer. I found a backup file from 2 years ago. I'm not sure it's complete, but I'll try to extract the data." "Do it," I nodded. "But keep the original metadata intact. Log every action. Marcus looked grim. You suspect what happened to the baby, don't you? I don't want to suspect, I cut him off. But I can't ignore it anymore. The whole afternoon I could barely focus on anything else. Every time the phone rang, I jumped. I called the hospital to request a certified copy of my old medical records. By evening, Marcus called. Cassidy. I found some old texts between Garrett and Brenda. There's an exchange you should sit down for. I was standing on the balcony. Hearing that, my legs gave out. I went inside and sat down. Marcus sent the screenshot. It was a text thread from the days following my miscarriage. Garrett wrote, Mom, don't say anything else in front of Cassidy. She won't stop crying. Brenda's reply, she'll cry for a few days and get over it. Losing the pregnancy will make her more docile. She can still have more. Don't worry. I read that sentence 1, 2, 3 times. The letters blurred. Losing the pregnancy will make her more docile. I covered my mouth, but the sobs escaped. It wasn't a normal cry. It was the sound of a wound being ripped open to raw meat. For 2 years I had lived under the same roof, ate at the same table, paid her bills. And she saw the death of my child as a way to tame me. I got up and opened the box where I kept the cream dress. It still smelled like old fabric. I hugged it and fell to the floor. My baby, I whispered with a broken voice. If I was wrong all this time, forgive me. I didn't sleep that night. I wrote down everything I remembered about that rainy afternoon. The sound of the slippers behind me. The sudden push. Brenda's calm expression. The fact that she didn't call 911 immediately, but just stood there staring for a few seconds. Her phrase, what terrible luck at the hospital. Near dawn, Aaron texted me. Stay calm. This text message is crucial, but not enough on its own. Tomorrow we find Maria and the old building super. I looked out the window. The sky was lightening after an endless night. Below, Chicago was waking up, unaware that a mother had just realized for the first time that her child wasn't lost to an accident. I wiped my tears and put the dress back in the box. Until now, I had fought to reclaim my dignity and my money. But from this moment on, I knew I had to search for another truth. The truth for the child who never got to call me mom. The next morning, I met Aaron in a small diner near the hospital. I could barely touch my coffee. In my bag, I had the copies of the medical files, the ultrasounds, the printout of Brenda's text, and a list of people who might remember that day. Aaron slid a glass of water toward me. Cassidy, today we only seek facts. We won't force anyone to say what we want to hear. No assumptions. Whatever they remember, we document. I nodded. After a sleepless night, my eyes burned. I was terrified of hearing something even more painful, but I was more terrified of living the rest of my life without an answer. The first person we found was Maria, the part-time housekeeper who cleaned our condo 2 years ago. When she saw me, she froze, holding a half-cleaned basket of vegetables. Maria, it's Cassidy Lawson. Do you remember me? She looked at me for a while and sighed. Of course I remember. I've heard some things about your family lately on Facebook. Poor woman. I got straight to the point. I wanted to ask you about the day I fell down the stairs. 2 years ago. Maria's face changed. That was a long time ago. I don't know much. Aaron placed his business card on the table, speaking calmly. Ma'am, just tell us what you saw or heard directly. You don't have to draw conclusions. We won't get you in trouble. Maria looked around the diner and guided us to an isolated booth. She spoke in a very low voice. That day, I arrived a little later than usual. When I got there, the ambulance had just left. There was a wet spot on the stairs. It looked like blood had been scrubbed away. Mrs. Brenda was wiping it down, very aggressively. While she cleaned, she was muttering something. My heart raced. What was she muttering? Do you remember? Not the exact words, but it was something like, "What terrible luck. We were so peaceful and now this mess." Hearing that, my blood ran cold. Who, with a daughter-in-law who just lost a baby, would say something like that? I clenched my fists. Did she look scared? No. She was very calm. Too calm. That's why I remember it. I even asked if she needed me to go to the hospital to help. And she said no. She told me to stay and clean everything perfectly so the neighbors wouldn't see anything and start gossiping. I looked at Aaron. He showed no emotion, just took notes. Maria lowered her voice even more. I didn't see anyone push you. I only saw the aftermath. But I'll tell you the truth. The vibe in that house was very weird. Mr. Arthur was sitting on the sofa, pale as a ghost, hands shaking. And Mrs. Brenda just kept mopping the stairs over and over, like she was terrified a stain would be left. If necessary, I asked, would you be willing to repeat this to the police? Maria lowered her head for a long time, then sighed. I'm scared of getting involved in drama. But you lost a child. I'm a mother too. I understand. What I saw, I'll say, without adding or taking anything away, I stood up and thanked her with a bow of my head. Walking out of the diner, my legs trembled. Aaron slowed his pace. Are you all right? I'm not all right, but I can keep going. Our second stop was to see Stan, the old building superintendent. When he saw me, he squinted, trying to remember. Ah, the lady from the duplex, right? The one who fell down the stairs that year. I sat in a plastic chair. Yes. Do you remember that day? Sure. I was on the afternoon shift. The front desk got a call because a loud thud came from your unit. But the weird thing is, the family didn't call 911. I held my breath. Who called then? A neighbor downstairs heard a scream and called the desk to ask what was going on. I went up to check, and Mrs. Brenda opened the door. She told me her daughter-in-law slipped, and she had already called the family. Aaron interjected, Did you ask if she called an ambulance? Yes. She told me she was going to wait for her son Garrett to get back to decide. I thought that was crazy. Do you remember the approximate time? My lawyer asked. Not the exact minute, but I logged it in my shift notebook. The EMTs arrived way later than I expected. I remember getting mad. A pregnant woman falls. You call 911 immediately. Why the hell are you waiting for the husband? A lump formed in my throat. I had been conscious in agonizing pain that whole time. Stan looked at me with pity. You were on the floor, at the bottom of the stairs. You were pale, holding your stomach, moaning in pain. Mister, Arthur was next to you, repeating over and over, call an ambulance, call an ambulance. But Mrs. Brenda had this totally cold look on her face. I remember it because later on, I thought to myself, that is not the face of a grandmother about to lose a grandchild. I turned away. The wind off the street was blowing dust in my eyes, but it wasn't the dust making me cry. Stan dug into a drawer and pulled out an old logbook. I don't work there anymore, so I just kept my personal notebooks. It's not the official building log, but I wrote down the unit number and the time the EMTs came in that day. See if it helps. Aaron photographed the pages and asked Stan if he would sign a statement for verification. He agreed, saying something very simple. Lying about life and death brings bad karma. Back in the car, I sat in silence for a long time. The pieces fit. Brenda didn't call 911 immediately. Brenda scrubbed the stairs. Arthur was trembling. The text message. Losing the pregnancy will make her more docile. There wasn't a camera directly recording the push, but sometimes the truth isn't on a video. It's in the details the wicked think time has erased. Late that afternoon, the hospital emailed me the certified copy of my medical history. The diagnosis was the same: trauma from fall, non-viable pregnancy. But in the incident notes, the attending physician had written, patient reports sudden loss of balance, describing a sensation of being propelled from behind, followed by a fall down a flight of stairs. Reading that sentence, my entire body froze. It turns out, I had verbalized that exact sensation in the midst of the trauma. But later, when the entire in-law family repeated over and over that I had slipped from exhaustion, I believed them. I believed them to the point of blaming myself for 2 years. Just before dusk, Arthur called again from an unknown number. This time, his voice was very weak. Cassidy, tomorrow, if you can, meet me at the small coffee shop near the hospital's back entrance. Don't come alone. I gripped the phone. Do you want to talk about the pregnancy? There was a silence for several seconds. Then he broke down crying, the sob of an old, cowardly man who had kept a secret for far too long. Yes, I failed you and the baby. The call ended. I sat in my car, watching the Chicago sky go dark through the windshield. The streetlights flickered on, leaving blurry yellow streaks. I wasn't crying anymore. My tears had dried up, leaving only a freezing void in my chest. I didn't have the complete truth yet, but I had enough fragments to know that the fall 2 years ago wasn't an accident. And tomorrow, the person holding the biggest piece of the puzzle was going to have to speak. Arthur asked me to meet him at a small cafe tucked behind Northwestern. It was hidden under old oak trees, with faded patio chairs and a squeaky ceiling fan. I arrived with Aaron Sterling, just as Arthur had requested. As the hour approached, my heart grew eerily calm. There are truths you desperately want to hear, but when they finally knock on the door, you just want to close your eyes. Arthur was sitting in a corner booth. His back was more hunched than the last time I saw him. His gray hair was messy, and his hands resting on his knees wouldn't stop shaking. In front of him was an untouched iced tea. As soon as he saw me, he tried to stand up, but his knees gave out. Aaron helped him sit back down. I pulled out a chair and sat across from him. "Speak," I said. Arthur looked at me. His eyes were bloodshot, full of fear and shame. "Don't treat me with so much respect," he said hoarsely. "I don't deserve it." I didn't answer. Before, a sentence like that might have softened me. But now, between him and me, there was a child who never got to be born. Aaron placed his phone on the table, recording app open, and stated clearly, "Mr. Thorne, you are here today to give a voluntary statement. Tell us only what you saw with your own eyes and heard with your own ears. No assumptions, no embellishments. Do you understand?" He nodded. That afternoon, it was raining. Cassidy came home early. I had come back from my appointment early too, and because I was tired, I sat in the reading nook on the landing to rest. The door was cracked open. I heard Cassidy say hi to Brenda and say she was going to lie down. I felt my throat go dry. Arthur continued. I heard Brenda's slippers following her. At first, I thought she was just going up to get something. But when Cassidy was almost at the top landing, I looked through the crack in the door and I saw her. I saw Brenda put her hand on her back. He stopped. His shoulders trembled. And then, I asked in a whisper. He broke down crying. She pushed her. It wasn't a hard shove. Not enough to throw a healthy person. But you were tired, pregnant. Your balance was off. It was a quick shove. You stumbled, tried to grab the rail, but you missed and fell. I heard the faint clinking of ice in his glass. That was when I realized my own hand was shaking. What did you do in that moment? I asked. Arthur buried his face in his hands. I ran out. I saw the blood. I told her to call 911 immediately, but Brenda grabbed my arm and said she was calling Garrett first. She said if it caused a scene, the family would look bad. I was a coward. I'm terrified of her, and I was afraid that if the family broke apart, nobody would take care of my illness. I looked at the man in front of me. He hadn't pushed me, but his silence had crushed me for 2 years. He had forced me to live with the guilt of a mother who thought she dropped her own child. Why did she do it? I asked. It was her grandchild. Arthur looked up, tears rolling through his wrinkles. Brenda was scared. She said it many times. If you had the baby, your money would go to the child. If Garrett had a kid, he would listen to you more than her. She said this house lived off you, and she couldn't allow you to have one more excuse to keep your money. I yelled at her for talking like that, but I never thought she would actually do it. I let out a short laugh. A laugh that cut like a knife. A 1-6, weak, old baby in its mother's womb. To her, it was just an excuse to keep the money. Arthur covered his face again. I am guilty. Since that day, I haven't slept in peace. Every time you handed me cash for my co-pays, I wanted to confess, but I didn't dare. I was a coward. Arthur, I said word by word, you weren't just a coward. You were an accomplice. He lowered his head without arguing. Aaron waited for him to calm down, then pressed for details. The exact timeline. Where everyone was, Brenda calling Garrett first. Scrubbing the stairs. The things she said afterward. He answered slowly, his voice cracking, but his details matched Maria's, Stan's, and the hospital records perfectly. At the end of the meeting, Aaron said, "Mr. Thorne, if you want this to mean anything, you have to give this statement to the Chicago police. A confession in a diner isn't enough. Are you willing?" Arthur looked at me. I didn't give him a pleading look. I just looked at him the way one looks at someone who owes a statement to a dead child. He nodded. "I am willing." even if I die tomorrow. But I don't want to die a coward. I stood up. Don't talk like you're redeeming yourself for me. Testify because it's your duty. Because my child deserves the truth. That afternoon, Aaron took Arthur to the precinct to file a formal statement. The police report was submitted alongside copies of the medical records, the recovered text messages, the affidavits from Maria and Stan, and Arthur's voluntary recording. Aaron also requested protective measures for Arthur, anticipating retaliation from Brenda and Garrett. While the paperwork was being processed, I sat in the precinct hallway with my hands on my purse. Inside was the old ultrasound. I didn't take it out, but I knew it was there, like a silent breath of encouragement. 3 days later, Brenda was brought in for questioning. At first, she denied everything. She claimed I made it all up to steal the assets, that Arthur was senile from his illness, that Maria and Stan had been bribed by me. But when the detective read her the text message, losing the pregnancy will make her more docile, all the color drained from her face. Garrett was there too. He stood in the hallway, hair a mess. Seeing me, he approached. Cassidy, stop this. My mom is older. Why are you dragging up the past? I looked at him. This man who sat next to my hospital bed, watching me cry over our lost baby. And now, his only concern was that his mother was older. Did you know? I asked. Garrett looked away. Know what? That your mother pushed me. His silence was too long. And in that silence, I found the answer to the question I feared most. Garrett, I told him, you didn't just lose your wife. You lost the right to be a father 2 years ago. He turned pale, unable to speak a single word. That same afternoon, Brenda was formally charged with aggravated battery to a pregnant person, resulting in a miscarriage, and held on strict bond conditions. As they processed her, she kept screaming, Cassidy ruined me! She ruined this whole family! I stood a few feet away. This time, her screams didn't make me flinch. I just thought about that rainy afternoon. My little baby. The 2 years I blamed myself, while the culprit sat at my table, took my money, and called me her daughter-in-law. They took Brenda away. Garrett stood paralyzed. Arthur, in a corner of the precinct, cried like a lost child. And I put my hand over my stomach, where a tiny life once slept. My baby, I whispered. I found the way back. After Brenda's arrest, the condo that once shined with warm lights turned into an anthill of chaos. People coming and going, phones constantly ringing. But this time, nobody was sitting at the table planning how to extract more cash from me. They were too busy pointing fingers at each other. The news of Brenda's arrest spread like wildfire among the relatives. Those who had called to scold me for being heartless now maintained a tomb-like silence. Some sent texts. We didn't know what was happening. Please don't hold it against us. I read them and deleted them. When they didn't know, they judged with iron certainty. When the truth came out, their apologies were as thin as water. Derek was the first to fall. The police brought him in for the $80,000 debt and the forged signature. At first, he tried to justify it, saying he only took the papers to expedite the process. But Chloe's recording, the practice signature pad, and the security footage left him with no alibi. Chloe never went back to the duplex. She took her son and moved in with her mother in the suburbs, blocking Derek's number and communicating only through her lawyer. When Aaron asked her if she was sure she wanted to testify, Chloe lowered her head and said, I was wrong to play along with my mother-in-law. I'm no saint. But my kid can't grow up in a house where the solution to everything is passing the debt to someone else. Hearing that, I didn't feel sorry for her, but I didn't hate her anymore either. Some people only wake up when the fire reaches their feet. Waking up late is better than pretending to be blind. Arthur was moved to a specialized assisted living facility under state supervision. He called me once. His voice was faint. Cassidy, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but if I have to go to trial, I will go. You won't go for me, I replied. You'll go for the truth. He was quiet, then said, yes, for the baby. I hung up before my heart could soften. I didn't want to hate a sick man until the bitter end, but I could never call him dad again. There are silences more toxic than words. Garrett, for his part, completely lost his bearings. Apex Packaging officially terminated him following the internal audit. The stated reason was brief: violation of quality protocols, concealment of batch warnings, and leveraging personal relationships with a client. The night he got the termination notice, he called me from a blocked number. I hit record. "Cassidy, I lost my job." I didn't answer. "I know I was wrong to hit you," he continued. "But you took things to the extreme. Do you feel satisfied?" I looked out my window. Down by the Chicago River, people were walking in the cold. "I didn't force you to sign falsified reports. I didn't force you to use my name to brag to your employees. And I didn't force you to slap me in front of your entire family." Garrett went quiet for a few seconds. "After all, we were married for 5 years. Yes, 5 years. Enough time for you to understand I didn't deserve that treatment. But you did it anyway." He breathed heavily. "They subpoenaed me for my mom's case. They're asking if I knew anything about what happened when you lost the baby." I felt a sharp pain in my chest, but my voice remained ice cold. His voice broke, almost pleading. "There are things. If I say them, I'm ruined." I closed my eyes. "Garrett, my child is already dead." There was only the sound of his breathing on the line. I hung up. 2 days later, Garrett didn't show up for his deposition. That morning, Marcus sent me a video from the security camera in my old condo. In the middle of the night, Garrett and an unknown man were hauling out the 7.5-inch TV, the washer and dryer, the sound system, and several boxes of electronics. Near dawn, he came back to take some artwork and the high-end espresso machine. All things I had paid for. Watching it, I only tasted bitterness. The man who used to wear pressed shirts and drive a luxury SUV I paid for was now secretly fencing the appliances of a house that wasn't his. His pride was finally being weighed by the pound in a pawn shop. Aaron Sterling added the charge of dissipation of marital assets to the divorce petition. Illinois law was clear. The condo was premarital, bought with my separate funds. Most of the furniture was backed by receipts linked to my personal accounts. The car Garrett drove, also in my name, was in the process of being repossessed by court order. Almost 3 months later, the divorce hearing took place. Garrett didn't show up. His lawyer claimed he was in a residential treatment facility for mental health and couldn't attend. But Aaron knew he had skipped town. With all the notices properly served, the judge proceeded. I sat in the courtroom wearing a crisp white blazer. In front of me was a thick binder: the condo deed, the mortgage, the payment history, furniture receipts, the car title, the domestic violence report, the CPD incident report, evidence of him selling the appliances, the forged debt file, and the documents tying him to Brenda's criminal case. The judge asked if I had any desire for reconciliation. I looked at the empty chair where Garrett should have been. "I do not, Your Honor." My voice didn't waver. Garrett's lawyer filed a motion asking the court to consider his contributions during the marriage. Aaron Sterling clearly presented that the major assets were premarital or purchased with demonstrable separate funds. The expenses paid to the in-laws were voluntary gifts that generated no equity. And the documented domestic violence, disturbance of the peace, and theft of assets had to be weighed. I listened to it all feeling hollow. I remembered my wedding day, Garrett holding my hand, promising in front of everyone that he would protect me for the rest of his life. Turns out, promises are like glass, beautiful when intact, but once broken, they just leave jagged edges. At the end of the session, the judge granted the divorce. The condo and documented assets were awarded to me as separate property. The disputes over the sold furniture and the forged debt were deferred to their respective civil and criminal tracks. When the court clerk read the line, "The parties share no minor children," I felt a sharp pain in my chest. I lowered my head. My hand instinctively rested on my stomach. It wasn't that I never had a child. It was that my child never got the chance to have a name on any legal paper. Walking out of the Daily Center, the sun was blinding. I stood on the plaza steps and took a deep breath. A 5-year marriage had ended with a signature and a void nobody could see. "Are you okay?" Aaron asked. I looked at the Chicago traffic. I'm not okay. But I'm free. And to me, in that moment, freedom wasn't a shout of joy. It was the sensation of finally untying a noose that had been suffocating me for far too long. The criminal trial against Brenda took place on a late-year morning. The Chicago sky wasn't rainy, but the wind howling off Lake Michigan was brutal. I arrived early with Aaron. In my purse, I carried the old ultrasound not to show anyone, but to remind myself why I had to stay until the very end. They brought Brenda into the courtroom. She had lost a lot of weight. Her gray roots were completely grown out, and her face lacked the arrogant superiority of the days she sat at the head of my table screaming at me. But her eyes were the same cold as steel, refusing to admit defeat. When she saw me, she turned her head, pressing her lips together tight. Garrett was there too, sitting in the gallery. After being picked up on a warrant in a neighboring state working under the table, the man who used to drive a luxury car was now gaunt, with a week-old beard. He gave me a fleeting glance and lowered his head. Perhaps for the first time in his life, Garrett understood the price of living off others while believing you're the king of the castle. Derek sat further back, his eyes sunken. The case regarding the $80,000 debt and forgery was being handled separately, but today he was subpoenaed as a witness regarding Brenda's statements. Chloe was also there, clutching her purse, her face exhausted, showing no trace of the burgundy acrylics she flaunted that fateful Sunday. When the trial started, Brenda tried to keep acting. She cried, her voice cracking. I loved my daughter-in-law and my grandchild. That day I just leaned on her by accident. She fell. I'm an old woman. I'm sick. How could I hurt my own flesh and blood? I heard the words flesh and blood and felt cold. People often use blood to justify their crimes. But my child was her blood too. The only tragedy is that they didn't have time to grow up and speak for themselves. Then Arthur was called to the stand. He walked slowly, leaning on a cane. His back so hunched it looked as if he carried a lifetime of cowardice. Standing before the judge, he shook so violently he had to grip the podium. He recounted that rainy afternoon again. How Brenda followed me up the stairs. How she put her hand on my back. The quick shove, my fall, the blood at the bottom of the stairs. How she didn't call 911 immediately, but called Garrett. With every word he spoke, Brenda's face grew paler. Suddenly, she jumped up. Shut up, you senile old fool. Cassidy bought you off. The judge ordered her to remain silent. But that outburst was enough to rip off the mask of the loving, distraught grandmother. Why would someone who claims it was a tragic accident have so much hatred for a witness? After Arthur, Maria testified that Brenda scrubbed the stairs obsessively after the ambulance left, muttering, "We were so peaceful and now this mess." Stan confirmed that Brenda delayed calling emergency services while Arthur begged her to. Marcus provided the authenticated data extraction of the text message. Losing the pregnancy will make her more docile. She can still have more. Don't worry. Hearing that phrase read aloud in a courtroom was like having my heart crushed all over again. Chloe also took the stand. Her voice was quiet but clear. I was wrong to play along with my mother-in-law. But it's true she kept Cassidy's documents so my husband could forge her signature for a loan. She said many times that Cassidy was too proud and would pay just to avoid the drama. In the house, we all knew Cassidy gave $2,500 a month, and Brenda still demanded $1,000 more. When she refused, the whole family attacked her. The courtroom was dead silent. Piece by piece, the puzzle formed a complete picture. This wasn't a simple conflict between a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law. This was a family that used filial duty to extort money, tears to defame, violence to silence, fake documents to pass on debt, and silence to bury a life that hadn't even been born yet. During her final statement, Brenda didn't ask for my forgiveness. She just cried. I only wanted to protect my son. I was afraid of losing him. I was afraid that if Cassidy had a baby, she wouldn't take care of our family anymore. I looked at her until the end. In her head, there was only money, control over her son, and the fear of losing the ATM with my name on it. Not a single word for the baby. The judge sentenced Brenda to a severe prison term for aggravated battery resulting in a miscarriage, enhanced by the aggravating circumstances of the victim's vulnerability. Hearing the sentence, Brenda collapsed. Garrett burst into tears but didn't dare approach. Derek buried his face in his hands. Chloe wiped her tears silently. I didn't feel the euphoria I had imagined. Justice didn't bring my child back. A prison sentence couldn't erase 5 years of my youth. It couldn't unring 2 slaps. It couldn't make that cold house warm. But at least the truth had been called by its name. And those who once forced me to stay quiet finally had to listen to the voice of the law. After the trial, I sold the duplex. That house had too many tears trapped in its walls. I bought a smaller apartment overlooking the river. It has a balcony large enough to keep a few potted orchids. In the mornings, I water the plants, make a tea, and open the windows to let the sun in. I also left my corporate job after the internal audit wrapped up and opened my own financial consulting firm. This time, I don't use my talents to prop anyone else up. I use them to rebuild myself. One day, my mom came to visit, looked at the orchids, and said, "A plant with damaged roots can live again. You just have to change the soil." I smiled hearing that. She was right. There are people you don't even need to take revenge on, because their own greed is the deepest hole. They dig it with their own hands and eventually fall right into it. After everything, I learned one thing. Helping others is good, but doing it to the point of losing yourself is no longer love, it's self-sabotage. Kindness must have boundaries. The grateful will value it, but the greedy will always just want more.